I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is the Scarlett Effect. So this is going to sound a little weird. However, I believe that even though we're all born into human bodies, we don't all become full human beings. At least in the sense that we don't all arrive at the full expression of our humanity. In fact, it could very well be the case that we all must pass through some form of hardship or ordeal in order to realize our full humanity. Jordan Peterson has spoken about this. Among other things, he is known for his interpretation of the Pinocchio fairy tale, which could be considered the archetypal such journey for men. In the story, Pinocchio undergoes an ordeal that transforms him from a mere puppet to a real boy, which could be considered a transition from the potential of boyhood to the full expression of his male humanity. To do this, Pinocchio had to be brave and disciplined and sacrificial. And it's only when he risks his life to save his father that he kind of earns the right to become fully human. It's a nice story, right? Now, on some level, the Pinocchio ordeal is unavoidable for men. That is, hardship comes for men, and no one protects men from hardship. Certainly, men can fail and succumb in a variety of ways, or they can overcome and rise to the challenge. But they kind of can't avoid it altogether. This is not true for many women, especially many young women. For better or worse, women tend to be more protected from hardship than men are. But in my opinion, they still might have to go through an ordeal of their own in order to arrive at the full expression of their humanity as well. If they are too fully or too often protected from hardship, women can kind of stay dolls in their own right. Porcelain dolls to Pinocchio's wooden marionette, but dolls nonetheless. And one of the best examples of this phenomenon in popular culture is given to us in the character of Scarlett O'Hara in Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. And that's why I call this episode the Scarlett Effect. It's the moment epitomized by Scarlett O'Hara where women pass into the full expression of their female humanity. So Scarlett O'Hara, especially as portrayed by Vivien Leigh in the 1939 film adaptation, has got to be one of the most infuriating, impossible, insufferable characters to ever grace the silver screen. She is bratty, entitled, petulant, rude, spoiled, and perpetually dissatisfied, even in the midst of great wealth and privilege. However, she's also cursed with great beauty, so she kind of gets away with it. And I'm using the word cursed intentionally. Because of her beauty, men all around her, family and suitors, protect her from the hardships of life, which, irrespective of their intentions, keeps her in a protracted doll-like state much longer than is otherwise necessary. But because daddy pays for everything, and one gentleman caller after another comes seeking a hand in marriage, including the dashing and debonair Rhett Butler, who we'll get to in a moment, she can kind of act like a petty tyrant, an opportunity that she seizes with aplomb. But fate had other things in store for Scarlett. If you're interested in taking your understanding to the next level, I would encourage you to check out the Captain's Quarters, my members-only self-improvement community. Your monthly membership will get you access to a cadre of like-minded, supportive individuals, bi-monthly group consultation sessions hosted by yours truly, and exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. Click the link in the description for more information. Hope to see you aboard. Gone with the Wind is the story of the Southern landed gentry before and after the American Civil War, which, spoiler alert, didn't treat them very kindly. And there's a moment about halfway through the story when the war, from which she had mostly been protected, comes to Scarlett. Her family's mansion is burned down, and all her help abandons her. and she must chop her own wood to keep warm, and she must fetch her own water to drink, and she must dig in the ground for roots with her bare hands to keep from starving. And in her hardship and humiliation, her vanity and pride shattered, she makes a promise to herself and to God on high that she'll never go hungry again. Right? This is the moment that she earns her full humanity. Life kind of breaks her open. And from that moment forward, she stops her miserable complaining. And she becomes kind and grateful and patient and self-sufficient. And these are all wonderful things for any adult human being to be. Like, you kind of can't reasonably be considered fully human, man or woman, if you are still cruel and ungrateful and impatient and dependent. And it's only after she passes through this ordeal that she is finally willing to accept Rhett's proposal and become a wife and mother. Hurrah! Now, if the story ended there, we could probably say that they lived happily ever after. However, as I've said before, the only real difference between a comedy, which traditionally ends in marriage, and a tragedy is where the action stops. Unfortunately, once the war is over and things get back on track, Scarlett kind of goes back to her old tricks. And Rhett, who has been patiently pursuing her for decades, finally has enough and leaves her to her miserable devices. That's where we get one of the best mic drops in cinematic history. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Which is basically, I don't give a fuck about you or anything that you do in 1930s slang. And of course, the rest of us are wondering why this dude didn't come to his senses sooner. In any case, my point is that in order to realize their full potential, women might have to go through an ordeal like Scarlett. They may have to suffer some significant loss or hardship in order to attain to some measure of maturity, responsibility, and accountability. And until then, like Pinocchio, they may simply exist as silly mechanical puppets. Unless they are extremely virtuous and disciplined, which is rare for anyone to be, man or woman, people have to suffer in order to break open their hearts. And it's through those cracks that love and compassion can enter. And until that occurs, you're probably dealing with a child, irrespective of his or her chronological age. There you have it. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. I know you know somebody who needs to hear this. Other value propositions for those who are interested: you can join my free weekly newsletter, for which I write original content, or book a paid one-on-one consultation with yours truly through my website. There's also my book, The Value of Others, in which I explore my model of economic relationships, and my private member community, The Captain's Quarters, where I host bi-monthly group consultation calls, among other things. The links to everything are in the description below. Check them out if you are so inclined. And as always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.